Shalom. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to read through Gospel of Matthew, chapter 8, in these next few videos. Chapters 8 and 9 of the book of Matthew is a place where Matthew puts together a series of miracles that Jesus does. He kind of groups them together in these two chapters, and they're designed to show the authority of Jesus, being able to do what he does. Now, some scholars see in these two chapters 10 miracles that Jesus did, and they feel like that's a reflection of the 10 judgments that Moses did. In other words, Jesus is like a Moses, and so Moses did 10 judgments on Egypt. So here they picture Jesus doing 10 miracles, so that it's like Moses. I'm not sure I'd go there, but other scholars see that there are 3 sets of miracles, and each of these sets is designed to show the authority of Jesus over something very specific. And I tend to go that direction. So here we are in Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 through 4 is the first miracle. And I'm going to read it and talk about that a little bit. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them." So there's some important things to grasp here. For one thing, this is after the conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount, and so Jesus has finished teaching his disciples about how to live in his kingdom. And as he's come down from the mountain, he sees this man with leprosy. Now, the word leprosy is interesting. In the Greek, it is the word lepros, from which we do derive the word leprosy from. But in the scriptures, both in the Hebrew scriptures as well as the Greek scriptures, the Christian scriptures, the word leprosy is a generic word, and it typically doesn't necessarily mean Hansen's disease, like the formal diagnosis of leprosy, but it can pretty much represent any kind of skin disease, a skin eruption, an eczema, a psoriasis, could be leprosy, anything along that line. In Leviticus chapters 13 and 14, that's the Jewish law concerning leprosy in that day and time, and that if anyone were to contract this disease, they had to show themselves to the priest. The priest would examine it, and there were certain things that they had to criteria that they had to look at to make a diagnosis. And if you were diagnosed with leprosy, then you had to leave. You had to go live out away from all kinds of people. You couldn't be around people because you might make someone else unclean. Now, in the mindset of the Jewish world at that time, clean and versus unclean was not to do with hygiene. It had to do with moral purity or immoral purity. You were pure or you were impure. So if you were clean or you were unclean, then that's what they're talking about here. So if you got some sort of skin disease, you were classified as unclean. So you had to stay away from people lest you make them unclean. And in the Jewish law, in Leviticus chapters 13 and 14, it makes it very clear that if you're the leper, you can't touch another person, you will make them unclean. And if you are a clean person and you touch someone who is leper, you will become unclean. So that's important to recognize that. This is important, right? Because this is what Jesus did. There are these rules of isolation. And in addition to you being isolated in Leviticus 13 and 14, all of your possessions, clothing, bedding, furniture, even your house, could be destroyed because no one could run the risk of becoming unclean. And so this was a big deal here to have leprosy. But it's very important to know something here. Touch is forbidden. And what's the one thing that Jesus did? He reached out and he touched that man. And rather than Jesus becoming unclean, that man became clean. Not only was he healed of his leprosy, whatever his skin disease was, he became morally, spiritually clean, pure. And that's not the way things are supposed to go. This is the power of Jesus. This is the authority of Jesus, even over disease, where and also on these rules and regulations, even though this is his own word. He also says, don't tell anyone, but go and offer yourself to the priest. The Kohanim, that's the Hebrew word for the priest. There was a very specific rule there in Leviticus 13 and 14 about what the offering was to be. When you presented yourself to the priest, if you had become clean, you had to present yourself to the priest first, the Kohanim, and he would examine you, and based on the diagnostic criteria, if he pronounced you clean, on that day you had to give 2 live birds, a scarlet yarn, cedar wood, and hyssop. And there was a routine, there was a ritual to go with that. And then, after you were pronounced clean, you had to isolate yourself for 7 days. During those 7 days, you shaved off all your hair. That means from the top of your head all the way down to your feet. And you washed yourself, and you were isolated for 7 days. On the 8th day, you went back to the priest. He re-examined you. And if you were then pronounced clean, then on that day, you brought 2 male lambs, 1 ewe lamb, 3/10 of an ephah of finest flour mixed with olive oil, and that would be your offering. This is what Jesus is telling this man to do, that you must go, present yourself to the priest, you must bring these offerings. You have to go through this 8-day ritual. This is important. Now think of that for a minute. That is the confirmation. That is public confirmation that this man has been healed. Even though people saw it and witnessed it, it had to be official. Go to the priest. Go to the temple, show yourself to the Kohanim, bring the proper sacrifices. You know, this is one thing a lot of people do forget. Jesus was Jewish. He was not abandoning Jewish law. Keep that in mind. And by the way, it's also important to note this. The man asked the question, if you are willing. And what was Jesus' answer? I am willing. Hang on to that for you, because he's willing for you too.